Right. Let's do this. Good morning,
Let's do
everyone.
it.
I'm going to make everyone do an introduction.
Morning.
Right. Good morning.
Good
For
morning.
those who don't know me, I am Susan Young. This is my 20th year in the business, so I am old, even though my last name is Young. I have been with KW since we opened in July of 2010. I only know that because that was the year my son was born. And so I've been practicing real estate since, 2005, I believe. And I am also a managing associate broker here at Keller Williams, and I work on Ann's team. So if anyone has broker questions, it might be me that you've talked to. I think everyone that's on here has been in the business for less than a year. Am I correct? Has anyone been in longer than a year?
Me and Kelly's been in for about a year and 3 months. So
Okay, all right, Colton, you win the prize for sure. So, okay, we'll say no one everyone's under 18 months then. All right. So, I have instructed this course before. I will go through the material. I don't know what you guys have been taking from your Ignite session so far, but I am going to go through it and I'm going to be more of an off the cuff, and I will give you my take, my opinions, and I am happy to have discussions or answer questions that you all may have. See how good I am with Alicia's clicking. Right. So we're on to session 10, win with the seller. It's interesting. So start off with qualified sellers, able, ready, and willing to do business in the next 14 days. I would say that would be very aggressive. So I don't know. I would look at sellers, qualified sellers, as someone who's going to do something in the next 3 months. You even put them in your pipeline in the next, like if someone who wants to do something in the next 6 months. So my husband, who also has his real estate license, Chris, if I'm 20 years, he's like a year and a half behind me. So he's in his 18th year. But he was in the military. He was in the Navy for 29 years. So we've done a lot of military relocations. So for me, we've worked with a lot of sellers that are military. Well, you can't list until they actually have their posting message. So to me, a qualified seller, again, they usually know 2 to 3 months before they are actually going, and we often will start the process that early. I'm sure you've gone through this, leads, leverage, and listings. Everyone read the MREA. If not, how about, have you not read the MREA yet? And I see a little green light on you. Did you read the MREA? I hate that I can't see you guys.
we both read the MREA, me and Kelly.
I've just started it.
You did? Okay. I've got someone joining that he's going to be our old school, old hat agent, Travis. Travis, are you 3 years yet in the business?
I am 2.5.
2.5. See, Travis is a like me. He's a chronic learner. So thanks for joining us, Travis.
Yes.
I drove by one of your for sale signs yesterday. It's up in Buckingham.
Yeah,
area?
Pioneer.
All right. So my recommendation is definitely gonna be, you should read the MREA. I actually, I listened to episode 50 of the MREA podcast yesterday, so I don't know if anyone's listened to that. Jason Abrams, is usually host, but yesterday I listened to it yesterday, it gets dropped on Mondays. Gary Keller interviewed, Jason. And I thought that was really good. So I would highly recommend, for those of you, who drive a lot, the MREA podcast is a really good listen. So there are things about sellers that the industry has often said, a lot of marketing opportunities, which it does. It allows you of exposure. You put a for sale sign on the front lawn. Especially in a neighborhood that you want to look at farming or working, like that is a big exposure. You're going to get leads from a listing because typically when we start in the business, we all tend to work with more buyers. But as a buyer's agent, we tend to be, like a phantom agent, a ghost agent, because we don't have a lot of exposure, whereas a sign on a front lawn give you exposure to the public. When it says you have more control of your time, absolutely, listings are less time than it takes for a typical buyer. I'm going with numbers like from years and years ago, but I think it was like, I remember doing a course, it was like, on average, a buyer takes 27 hours of your time. On average, a listing takes 7 to 9 hours. You can work with more volume with sellers. You are able to help with pricing and marketing again for the listing. But as you can see now with even social media, a lot of people take the opportunity for a listing, but to promote yourself too and your business. Leads conversion, pre-listing, which we're going to go into, which is interesting, a listing consultation. So I've learned from doing lots of trainings that there's usually two philosophies of a listing consultation. I always refer to the person I think of who does the two-step listing consultation would be Jerry Murphy. He taught me that. So essentially, go do their listing appointment, talk about listing, what they will do. They also we'll go through this. You'll do a tour of the house. And then Murphy team doesn't give a number on that initial consultation. So they want it done in a two-step. And I often do that. So I explain it as, yes, I've brought comparables, and I wasn't in your house, and I didn't know the condition of your house, and I didn't know yet what upgrades. So I look at it as like an information gathering session. And then now I typically will do that. Don't go back usually second time. I have to have someone sign paperwork, old school. Now I typically do an online go through the paperwork because so I do a two-step consultation. But again, you're going to have different philosophies on that. Talk about marketing, offers and negotiation, and then contract to close. Post-close systems, I would say this is the best thing about Command. This is not my strong suit, however, is going to be our strong suit. Converting your A sellers. So this is it's again depending on how you're taking leads. So for instance, Jane, I believe you've just joined the CRT Marquee team, correct?
Yes, correct. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yesterday. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So the CRT Marquee is the largest team that we have here at KW Select. And they have a well-run machine as far as their lead generation, and Christine teaches her team how to work the leads. For individual agents, we have to, figure out how we're going to get leads and then how we're going to respond to them. So again, we can get to, Facebook marketing is something that we can be doing. There's so many touch plans now too that you can set up for automated systems, which is really makes our lives a lot easier. As I said, now I am a dinosaur in the business. So you go back 20 years and it was phone calls. Like that's how we talked to people. And then we had to get face to face. We had to have paper copies of the listings. This is something that they touch on. Number 3, determine their motivation to sell so you can speak to it. I am a huge proponent of this. Everybody has a different motivation. And you determining that as the listing agent is like your golden goose egg. Got to find out what their motivation is. I'm going to stress you are going to use that to refer back to them constantly on a regular basis. Again, so when Travis got into the business, he came in as a COVID realtor. So it was hot market. If you listed something, you put a sign on the front lawn, you had tours for 3 days, and then you presented multiple offers. We're swinging back to what I call a BC, so before COVID market. So now you have listings that are going to take a bit longer to sell. This training is going to say about how that gives you opportunity. It gives you opportunity to do more marketing. It gives you opportunity to gather more leads. Obviously, your goal is to sell the home. However, that may take price reductions. And my biggest thing that I swear by, and I tell no matter what course I would be training or you were asking me about, always about setting the expectations. For those of us who have kids, we do it. And I would tell you in real estate, it's the best thing for clients to show your knowledge and to provide expertise. Setting expectations is key. So again, you're going to do a listing and say, because I say to people now, typically under 500 sells quickly, over 600 and sit for a while. Set that expectation. Know your numbers going in, saying the last 3 houses have been, average 67 days. So we're looking at the possibility of your house sitting on the market for the next 2 months before we get an offer. This is how the process is going to work. So by telling them that, it puts ease on them. So again, I'll go back to motivation. So finding out why they need to sell will determine a lot of things of how you can deal with them. Again, so you'll know this even from once you find out their motivation. You'll know this with your pricing strategy. If you go back to a seller and you're like, okay, I've looked at your house, your home shows very well, done comps. I think you should be listed between the 550 and 560 range. If they say, no, you know what, we really think we're going to get 625, so we want to start at 649. That's going to curtail to their motivation, right? So then I always blame it on the market, right? In my listing presentation, it says, I can't determine the market. The buyers determine what they're willing to pay and the seller determines what they're willing to accept. But again, this goes back to their motivation. That was a military client for me and I knew they had to move. Then I can speak to, well, you have to be in Ottawa by July 15th. Going on in April, I've told you the days on market is on average 2 months, 67 days. So that puts us at June of getting an offer. And then we're looking at an average of 6 to 8 weeks closing. So that puts us at July, mid-July, maybe a little after you've left. So if we don't get in that window, we stay on the market longer, you're going to be able to carry 2 homes. And again, this is a motivation I've found out. Are they buying where they're going? Do they need to sell this house before they can buy? So motivation to me is key. We will always be able to go back to that. It's like having a little fire that you can light under their butt if things aren't selling. Appointments, time and date, and pre-listing package, which I think they talk about. As we go further about pre-listing packages. So what sellers want most from their agent? I think it's divided fairly equally among the first three. Help price the home competitively, help the seller market their home to potential buyers, help sell their home within the specific time frame. Again, that goes back to motivation. Help sellers find ways to fix their home to get it, sell it for more. Then I guess we could have other. Building confidence and trust. Oh, again, I think we've talked on that. Building confidence and trust to me is it's your first listing. We now have the advantage of you either have a mentor, been assigned a mentor, or you're on a team. So you have experience to lean on and to get guidance from someone. So say to you, even when we're going to pre-listing packages, you don't have stats of your own to share. You can share that of your brokerage. So, you can talk about experience as well based on your brokerage. With all the sayings they would say, to fake it till you make it. So you just have to have systems in place. I would say to people that, especially, which is amazing when you're starting out, is create good habits other than like a lot of us that we create habits and we have to go and try to do things properly. So first of all, doing training like this is amazing. But get into habits of systems that you have. So for me, I have a system with listings. I have a checklist of how I do things. I have template emails that I use. So when I list a house, I have a let's get your house sold email. I have been using that email since Lindsay created that for us. So that was back at my former brokerage. So pretty much getting it, well, it might be a little modified, but the same version over 15 years ago is still sent. So it's just habits that you create and systems, which makes your life a lot easier of doing this stuff. For even your checklist, ordering up sign when you put the lockbox on, because for a lot of us, even remembering to take the lockbox off after the house closes. So I would say to you, look at creating systems, habits, plate emails, and using command for checklists is an amazing opportunity. Yeah. 7 close to appointment tactics. Okay. Have you guys talked about so I'm a big proponent of the DISC profile, personality profiles. When I am seeking someone's motivation, asking those questions, I am also trying to figure out their personality. And I gear how I deal with clients based on their personalities. Has anyone done the DISC profiling? You familiar? Got a nod from Suzette. Essentially, the DISC, so DISC is the dominant personality. for the quick, let's get to the point. Don't give me a 27-page presentation because I do not have time for that. Go look at my house, tell me what it's worth, and tell me what I need to do, and let's get going. I that fun, outgoing personality that wants to show you the whole house, want to tell you where they entertain, type of person. An S is the more safe, secure, and it's often you'll see it in husband and wife. It's usually opposites in personality. The S personality I find is quieter, often can be the decision maker of the relationship. So you tend to talk to the D or the I because they're more outgoing. But I often look to see if the S and ask how they answer questions when I ask them directly. That helps me determine who the decision maker is in between sellers and then the C is the highly detailed analytical person. So they are the person who loves the pre-list presentation. You will often tell, like, if you give them a pre-list presentation and you say, like, I need your property tax, I need your property disclosure statement filled out, I need a key. When you show up for your for your listing appointment, it's all there on the table. So that to me tells me they're a C personality. And I would determine these based on how, again, I'm not an aggressive salesperson. So I would be more, I want my sellers to feel like they are the drivers, they are the decision makers. So when it comes to the appointment tactics, or that would be a closed tactic. But I know that we would have probably different scripts for this type of scenarios. Does anyone have questions so far? Questions versus objections. So it has often been said that objections are just questions, right? So first one is going to be, what do you charge? What's your commission? We're going to get that. Thank you for coming out. We appreciate you looking at our home. We just need to take some time to figure out how we're going to proceed. Or they may come out and tell you they're interviewing other people. The same type of objections. It's not like there's 100 different objections. It's usually around the same things. And it is often said that scripting, knowing the objections and how to handle them, would be just essentially them asking a question. And you just need to have an answer for them to have as a response. In bold, they do a whole section on objections and objection handling. It's actually it's a really fun to do. I know there are lots of teams that do like script practices and handling that stuff. I think this more refers to, I think of it as when you're face to face with someone, but it also has to do with getting an appointment for a listing. As the saying goes, like, you're never going to make a buyer buy or a seller sell, right? You can't determine their motivation. Always is, you have to just discover their motivation. So back to the example I was using, that the seller said, no, I want 625. To me, that says they have a certain amount of money that they are expecting from their house. Most likely, when I look at the stats and I told them between 550 and 560, they're not going to get that. So they're off on their expectations, right? So then there's a whole bunch of questions of, do I take the listing? Do I take it for that high over? I'm all about setting the expectations, and there was a point I remember going to one appointment that I said, remember it was at the beginning of COVID, and they had a number and they were like, anything above this will work. We actually above that. Sometimes determining that, like, especially if you've got a nice property that's going to sell, like, it's under 500, they're typically, I was on competing on something recently that was listed at 350. We were one of 9 offers, and I saw it firmed up yesterday, so it sold for 425. So I showed my clients like where I thought range would be. I mean, they couldn't nail it down to exactly what was the final person was going to bid, right? So some of those factors are outlying. Again, that's part of the expectations. And I explain that to sellers or buyers based on, maybe we will get a little bit more than 560. It is possible because your house shows well, it's in a great school district. However, there hasn't been any sales or comparables over 600. So your expectations might not line up with what I can do for you.
You set shorter listing timeframes for people that want to list their home for more than maybe typically would.
So, Melissa's asking if I set time constraints. So first rule is, MLS rule is your listing has to be at least 60 days, your listing appointment. Your listing agreement, so your SDBA, go on MLS. I have for years and years and years, just because it was the way the market was, it was an average of 90 days to sell. It was an average of 6 weeks to 2 months to close. So that puts us at 5 months and then the buffer. So I would typically do a 6-month listing. Military, typically, they want a 90-day listing, which is tough for if a house is going to sit on the market for more than 40 days. But you can relist it, or you can continue the listing. Anyone else have questions? Can I keep going?
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify when you're talking about the 90 days and the 60 days, are you talking about like the contract length?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll put my broker hat on for you for a sec. So MLS rule is that an MLS listing, when you check that off in your SDBA, must be at least 60 days. Also, the NSREC rule is, so let's say a 90-day listing, so 3 months, right? Let's say you got an offer in the first week. They wanted a 3-month closing. So it's past, so I'm just going to throw out random numbers. So your listing expires December 31st. Closing date is January 15th. Your SDBA is supposed to be active, which essentially keeps you in contract with that client, with your seller, till close. So, even though the deal firms up, so let's say it firms up at the October 15th, but the closing isn't until January 15th. And I'm just spitballing dates here, but to give you the idea. When it expires on December 31st, we're no longer in contract with that seller. So you have no authority to be giving them advice, telling them about the pre-close, so you should always check, even after your deals have firmed on your listing, that your expiry date on your SDBA was, I would say, past. So because again, preparing for worst case scenario. So at least a day or two past the sold date. Does that make sense? Purposeful approach. This is amazing. This to me this is my life. Entrepreneurial. I have hit my ceiling as far as what I can do and knowing what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. What I love about KW and often is the models and systems. I'm very good at knowing the systems. Implementing them for me personally is not my strong suit. So, I have just hired Melissa, she's here, and she is going to be, my team's administrator. And that's why I say to you, even though I have systems as far as emails and templates, we're so, like, I feel like I'm gonna be one of those old people that when, remember when your grandparents told you how it was so hard to go to school and they wore one pair of shoes in snow up the hill I walked up the hill both ways. Real estate to me is so much easier now than it was. It's more complicated. There's more complexities with social media and everything. But the systems, like having command, having like opportunities, just go in there. Like I literally, we would print off you before I would even send it via a PDF, but I would print off my listing agreements, would bring it to my Alicia, like the admin, and say, here you go. They had file folders at my brokerage and it was by property address. And you literally, once you got your deal, you gave it to them, they processed it, and it would go in the file. Now with command on the systems, it's like it's electronically there and just got all things created. So I'd say dive into that stuff. Setting up your own systems checklists. And the plan is that you're going to get so busy that you're going to have multiple deals on the go. And it's fine when you're doing one listing at a time and one buyer at a time, but when you've got 3 listings and 4 buyers all at the same time and you're doing all of the things, it's a lot. It really is. Which is sometimes why I don't eat supper until 30 or 9:30 night. So this is another philosophy. Pre-listing packages. I firmly believe in pre-listing packages. I do pre-listing packages myself. However, the one thing I don't do, which I know some people do, is send the pre-listing package prior. So I would say to you that is a personal choice. It's a logistic choice, getting the pre-listing package. Pre-listing package should tell a lot about you, about the process, can give resources. So it says like pre-sell, build the seller's confidence, answer their questions and objections before the presentation. When I was here, objections, thing I think of the people push back on is commission. I don't put that in my pre-listing package. I want to be in front of the consumer to talk about that, and then be able to refute or rebut what they have to say. But it also saves time. It makes the consultation experience smoother. We recently saw Jeff Glover in Moncton last week, and he was asked about his listing appointments. He is in and out in 35 minutes. And I'm like, that is good. I am not that good. I believe you have to build rapport. You also have to tour the house. You have to make notes of the house. You've got to go through a presentation. So I would say I'm an hour and a half. Definitely not 30 minutes, which would be probably amazing because I probably would do more listing appointments. Stating your value. Williams often talks about your value proposition. I believe that's huge. You need to articulate to people what your value is, what you provide. However, you have to do it in a way that also it's all about them and their needs and what their motivation is. So a pre-listing package is really good for that because it'll talk about how long I've been in the business, my experience, that type of thing. I don't want to spend half of the time while I'm there selling myself. So I find a pre-listing package is really good for that. For me, I bring my pre-listing package with me when I go on my listing consultation. Says does it eliminate the need for a listing consultation? I don't believe in that. I believe, like, I've made the mistake in the past too of you have a neighbor or a good friend and you don't do all of the steps. Now, I have had clients that are past clients and repeat. So when I get there, they don't want me to go through my presentation that I do on the iPad. That is fine. If they are ready, once I do the tour of the house, we talk about price and stuff, they're ready to sign, we are going to sign. Again, but they always get a pre-list package from me. So I have in it, like my lawyer recommendations, fire one, I have inspectors. In my cellar, I have appraisers, because if you are RCMP or military, you do need an appraisal done on your property. So I give resources like that as well in my presentation, in my pre-list package. But if the seller especially if they know you've worked with them before, if they want to skip over that stuff, I'm happy to skip over it. Criteria. Prism. Here it is. There's pre-list packages in Connect. Anyway, there are resources there. And you can make your package, but you can customize the front page to have the client name on. I mean, again, I stopped giving them during COVID. You can give them electronically. We still bind them, and I physically bring it with me. Color consultation preparation checklist. So deliver your pre-list packet, confirm your appointment, date, time, and location. You can even now, you can set up in your Google Calendar. So you can send to the client an invite, remind them of your appointment. Typically depending on the time of the appointment, I will either message them the night before or that morning. So if it's at like 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, I will message them in the morning, say, just want to confirm, you can still come over 6 p.m. tonight. Does that still work for you? Really big was asking the question about decision makers. I do not want to go to an appointment that only one of the spouse is there, like just the wife or just the husband. I want both, because that to me shows seriousness of, now you can't always control that scenario. But I definitely am asking that question. Are you both going to be attending? Complete and practice your listing presentation. Depends on, there are people who have, again, so you have your pre-list, you can do a presentation. Travis,
Yes.
do you do like a PowerPoint listing appointment?
No, I have same sort of a thing. I have a binded with a clear cover booklet basically that I go through.
So you have it's a pre-list booklet, and then you go through that paper copy?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
And in
Go
it,
ahead.
again, I've defined it over time. It's not something that you work on it, you add to it, you take away from it. It's it's more so just a laid out plan of what is to take place.
So I have my pre-list, then we have a little, so bad because I've been using this same thing for so long. On the iPad, I just have a little slide presentation like this. It's literally like the same slides I go through, and it kind of prompts me what to talk about in steps. So I can probably do that with out questions in about 15 minutes. And then, however, if there are questions during it, so I pre-emphasize, like I say, I'm gonna go through this because it'll keep me in order. I'll talk about everything. Hopefully it'll answer most of your questions. If I don't, then at the end, you can ask me any questions you want. Please feel free to ask while we go through it. So that's what I do. I am gonna, I don't know if anyone has told you this yet since during Ignite, but I would say to you, highly recommend doing bold. With next time bold comes and you have the opportunity, I would say to you, take bold. Bold is very bold. Good word for it. I was very nervous about it, and I actually didn't do it the first couple times because I know how much they hold your feet to the fire to actually do the activities, which would be my strong suit. However, even having the knowledge now that I've done it several times, knowing these things, it's really eye-opening. And again, that's why I say, like, even doing Ignite, like, I think this is an amazing course. Kind of give you, the stepping stones of all of the things from an educational perspective. Obviously, you have to go and do the things. Like, for instance, if you called me and said, and I'm on broker duty, and you said, hey, I'm doing my first listing appointment in a couple of days, and I want to the paperwork all done up. Can you have a look at it? For sure I can. I would rather you practice and have it looked at by me rather than winging it. The same thing with an agreement of purchase and sale, winging it and doing it. We've done it before and only done it once or twice and not knowing. So I would rather, that's why they say scripts and dialogues are amazing. Like, you guys could get together as a group and you could get some scripts and dialogue, and one plays, the seller, one plays listing agent, and then you can have objections done. And again, he's been doing it a long time, but Jeff Glover did that in our presentation. He actually showed the video of, he had his coaches act as sellers and buyers, and he went through he told us, he said, I told them backstage, he's like, I want you guys to be tough on me. I want you to ask the hard questions. And watching his answers, like, they were well practiced, like he knew how to do it. And you're only going to get better with time and practice, right? I have a 14-year-old and a 10-year-old. So I have to tell them that on a regular basis. Like, my son's playing hockey. I'm like, you're not going to be the best hockey player unless you have time and you practice and you put a lot of time and effort into it. It's the same thing with this. Say to you, practicing with one another is a lot better than going and practicing and fumbling through it with actual real clients, potential client. Signed listing agreement set a great impression to build the seller's confidence in you as the real estate agent of choice. I don't compete a lot. I also don't go on like 3 listing appointments a week. So for me, it's either a referral from a past client or a friend, or now a past client, that I get the majority of my business. However, say to you, like, again, don't practice on, although I still am practicing, right? Because maybe something will come up objection wise that I've never heard before. That's not often. And again, it's usually the same type of questions that you will get. Fair price recommendation, the initial list price for their property and the reasoning behind it. I do that, follow up. I have a templated email. I tweak it My email says, as we discussed, I'm gonna recommend what we talked about, that you were gonna have the upstairs painted, you were going to, do some more for the curb appeal. I list those things, talk about the timelines, go back to, again, the motivation. If I have someone who's like, we're thinking about in spring, and so I'm going now in October, I have a caveat that I write, essentially said, please note that this is what I'm giving you the listing price now. It's on now's comparables. If you're waiting till April, numbers are going to change. They could go up, they could go down. So I'm setting the expectations on that. Share your price recommendation. Mine is typically 10,000 range that I give. That also, I also can tell someone's motivation. Obviously, like, and I explained that in my presentation, my goal is to get you the most amount of money, shortest period of time. This is my goal. However, goes back to where we are on the list price. Right? So, and if I have someone who picks the lower end of that price range, I know that they are really motivated. Their house sold. Again, so setting expectations for how you will market the home and work with sellers. I talk about that in my package and in my presentation. I talk about communication. I also then, in that, I send a let's get your house sold email that I send. That has my expectations. It's about viewings. It talks about showing time. It's just setting the expectations of how it's going to work. Talks about feedback. You need to tell your sellers. Again, God bless them. They have spent 3 hours getting their house prepped. An agent is coming to view it with clients. And as soon as they walk out the door, calling you saying, have you heard? Like, what did they think? So I set the expectations on that. My email says within 24 hours, if I don't have feedback, I will reach out to the agent, and I tell them about the process when I'm with them, how it works for listings. However, things have changed since COVID. I think we're seeing the talk in the Facebook groups and stuff. Less than half of agents are giving feedback. I mentioned that in the last meeting. I always give feedback. So many reasons. Like, you as the flip side, as a listing agent, your seller wants to know. You also want to provide value. During COVID, we would say feedback is going to be offers. That's what it's going to be. On Tuesday, we're going to have, I don't know how many offers I'm going to sit with you and present, but I'll be here with the feedback on what people think your house is worth. Now, like, my feedback will always be like, thank you so much for allowing us. Please thank the seller for accommodating our showing. My clients liked this. Then I will, I typically can give something constructive feedback that comes from me as the professional. Like, we found that the basement was very musty smelling. Maybe you would recommend that they give them, put a dehumidifier down there. And unfortunately, the layout of the upstairs and the size of the bedrooms just isn't going to work for my buyers, their personal needs. But thank you for showing, and all the best on a quick sale. It's the feedback that I always give. I tell my sellers that, like, I on the flip side, I explain to them, we're going to get feedback. Thing I hate more than does not work for my client. Like nails going down a chalkboard to me. Does not work for my client. As a professional, we should be giving, even if you can't give the opinion of your client, like that they say this was a hellhole, give something constructive that you would want to give to your seller. I also keep that in mind. I never send the feedback directly to my sellers. I give it to them, like, so showing time, because it was taught years ago in one of my courses, we really shouldn't be commenting on price of people's listings. So I can say in feedback, my buyers felt for the houses they looked at, this one was priced too aggressively. for what they think should, like, in the market. Depending on where we are. But typically, like, even the click boxes of where do you think the price is? I don't do that. I tell if there's interest, somewhat interest, and then I give my detailed feedback in the comments section. That's what I send. You know, you can comment on the condition, you can say it was very good. You know, type of thing, but I don't typically comment on pricing. I have questions on that.
Susan, I do have a question, just about the objections in general, like in your own personal experience. So
Mhm.
you've talked a little bit about the I need to think about it piece, as well as kind of like the price level piece. What would be kind of the third biggest objection that you come across?
The best way too is, even with those type of objections, is asking questions. Again, asking more about what else do you feel that would have helped, that information that I didn't provide to help you make a decision. Or, you know, finding out, again, if I've got their motivation of, you know, my husband has had knee surgery and we're in this 3-level house and we need to move into a bungalow. Right? So I've kind of, you know, that they have a big house and they need to sell. Timeline, price. Did you say price on commission?
Just
Is
the like the like the price level, like I want to put it higher than what
Oh, so
you're
that's
recommending.
list price. I
Yeah.
would say the next biggest thing is typically is commission. That's the pushback. I had another agent in who said that they would do it for 3%. That would be the third one, probably second place. Bolton? He's paying attention. Can't see him.
Susan, I'll comment for a minute on
Yep.
objections, I guess.
Yep, go ahead.
I lost a listing yesterday, and the other realtor, they were basically giving the ship away with commission and extras that they were going to be doing for cleanings, and they were going to do this, and they were going to stage, and they were going to do that. Sometimes it's almost not worth taking a listing if you're not going to make any money.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, not gonna get arguments from me on that. Now, I know that there are agents that are charging top commissions and taking on those responsibilities. So
Yes.
paying for the cleaner, paying to have the place painted, or perhaps having renovations done, and that saying that would get paid out of the proceeds of the sale. Obviously, they would have probably a caveat that, you know, let's say the renovation company, $1,000 in renovations, whether the house sells or not, you have to pay that. But I agree with you, Travis. Like, you know, I have services that I expect. So then, back to talking about how old I am. When I started in the business, military relocations were 5%. So it was 2.5 to the listing side, 2.5 to the buying side. We put it on the street, and it went to I don't know if we went 4.5, and then it went to 4.4 forever. 2 and 2, 2, 2 and 2, 2. And recently it was 4.25. Then things got a little wonky as far as, were they putting 2% on the street or 2.25 on the street? But also, like, I've always had, for the last, I don't know how many years, but I've always paid for a staging consultation and I pay for a photographer. But COVID came along and I'm like, I need floor plans. Like, I need the Matterport. So listing, you know, my photos went from $150 to $750 to get all those things done. Yes. So again, those are ticket items, stuff that your services you're going to provide. So you're right, like I'm not gonna do it for 1.5% and spend $1,500 getting the listing ready, and again, that's what I do, that pushback when I get pushback on commissions. Like, well, brokerage, this is what I get from my brokerage, and then I have to pay CRA, and then I have to pay all these things for your listing. So this is what I end up with.
I would recommend to any newish agent have your minimum standard be professional photos as an absolute minimum.
What, you don't like iPhone photos on listings when you're looking at them, Travis?
Absolute minimum, yeah.
In my listing presentation, it says, I'll tell my sellers, you have 2 chances to make a first impression. First is online, second is when they walk through the door. So we need to get people into the house. So we need to make it look good. I'm going to help you with that by having a stager come in, give you a consultation, how to prep your house. And I'm also going to have a professional photographer come in and make your house look good. I also talk about the least expensive thing you can do is elbow grease and decluttering. Any seller can purge and clean the house, because so let's just take you out of cleaning the house. So let's say they pay $350 or $400 to have their house cleaned. I can't tell you how many times I've walked into a dirty house with buyers, and regardless of the house and the layout, we get in and they want to get out. They don't feel comfortable. They're like, and I'm like, well, again, if the house is in good condition, but if it's dirty, people don't feel relaxed. They can't, walk through a house and they can't envision it. So I'm like,
As well, I think.
oh yeah, clutter is crazy. They tried to sell a hoarder's house one time. That was fun.
Can I just quantify what Travis said about the minimum being the photos? So if you have something that's very rural and very kind of do it yourself in need, are you still spending the money for a photographer's professional photos in those instances? Or are these, complete and ready to go houses?
How much are you gonna make? It's the listing. Are we talking about $100,000 like
$150,000,
can?
$170,000 house?
I guess that's a business decision that you need to make. Again, for me, since average house that I was selling was a $200,000 when I started using a photographer. Again, I would have probably been making 2.5% commission on that. And I would be paying the 150. But again, that's Suzette is a business decision. Who knows? You, like Chris wanted at one point to buy like a really nice camera. I'm like, who are you kidding? I'm like, we're not good photographers, even if we had the camera. Well, maybe there are people, maybe you like photography and you have a good camera and your photos would look better than most people. So I would say to you, that's a business decision on your behalf. I'm from Cape Breton. Actually, I don't sell real estate in Cape Breton. However, I used to look at that all the time when I'd look at photos and properties, and I'm like, these guys are taking pictures with their phones, and they're still selling, $400,000 homes. It was like, oh, we don't have a photographer now. Now a lot of listings have professional photos. And again, I would say to you, that's a business choice for sure.
I'll add, Susan. Suzette, you're kind of defining your own self as an agent too when it comes down to if people see $175,000 listing with a Pepsi can in the corner taken with your iPhone. Not that it shows who you are as an agent, but if it was a professional photo with no pop can with whatever, and whatever it is, you're almost defining yourself a little bit too of, I am a professional. I do offer professional photos because let's say you took the listing with an iPhone and the neighbor wanted to sell and the house didn't show well. Maybe the neighbor would choose somebody else because you took a photo with your iPhone.
Mhm.
Again, every situation, Suzette, is different, right?
Yeah.
I've sold a lot of houses recently we have clients that have several rentals, right? You can only do so much when you've got a tenant.
Yes.
We had clients recently, like our sellers, that were willing paid for cleaner. We paid for the staging cost. Like the tenant canceled the cleaner. Like, would you? I would if someone offered me. Did you remember that story about when we heard about someone in Tantallon broke into someone's house, but it was a cleaning company went into the wrong house, and these homeowners came home and their house was clean. It's my dream to come home to a clean house. So again, we can only do so much what you have, right? But that's what you need to emphasize as far as decluttering, cleaning, how a house shows. And then for you, it's a business decision of Joe Phoenix would say that, like, he is out in Eastern Shore, like he might not be able to get a photographer to some of the places that he lists. Right? So I would say to you, that's just a business decision.
And I think, I guess, I know where, I can see both sides of it. Up here in Truro, there are like no home stagers within 45 minutes. So that would be the other question, I guess, is how long do you take as an agent trying to help them stage their home for pictures? And it's hit and miss if you can get a photographer up here as well.
I
Oddly
know
enough,
some very good agents in this office, and I'm not gonna call names, give them a hard time all the time, but there are agents now, whether they find that's their happy place, go in and help the clients declutter and help stage and do all of the things. I'm like, you work hard for your money.
yeah,
However, that's what they choose to do. So we've done it. I didn't do it. Chris and a buddy painted a house. I remember in Eastern Pass long because they had moved out and it wasn't selling and it was a very bold color. Painted like the main living area of a house. We even painted our own house and we painted someone else's. So again, business decision based on, and there are people that are in real estate that, have a staging background. So that might be part of your value proposition of like, I'm going to help you get your house prepared for getting it on the market. I'm a leverage person, so I'm going to pay someone to help them get their house ready, get on the market.
And I have a question just about something you mentioned.
Yep.
Earlier about when you're setting the price. So if someone is willing to list their price at a lower end, does that ever become a deterrent? Like you end up taking the listing longer to sell, or I would imagine it depends kind of where it is. Does that give people reason to doubt like potential buyers?
She's asking about when I give a price recommendation. So are you asking if they go on the lower side and it doesn't sell?
Wondering, does that ever present problems in terms of selling the listing?
I would,
quickly?
yeah.
People don't know why.
Well, I would say, again, I always explain when it comes to pricing, it's not me who determines the price. It's the market that determines the price. So you as a seller asked me, why would I go on the lower end? Well, that's where I have determined based on the comparables and looking at things, what they have sold for, this is where I think range would be for your highest and best price. However, if we put it on for $549 and that attracts, 5 buyers, market, that's going to autocorrect, right? We're going to get multiple offers and we're probably going to get more than even the $10,000 range that I gave them. My thing is also, I talk about You gotta get priced in the market. Like, you don't wanna be priced out of the market. And I've got stories, I've got history, like, of those sellers wanted this price. And I said, this price, and then they sit on the market for 7 and 8 months. We end up getting much less than this. And I guarantee you,
Less desirable the longer.
I guarantee you, if we had priced here, they not only would have carried a vacant house for 7 months, they would have got that price. They lost money. So the longer you stay priced out of the market, worse it's gonna be for you, in my opinion. But again, it depends. The other thing, which again, during 4 years of craziness, like I would tell people, especially when on the flip side, when I was working with the buyer, I'm like, so look at, X neighborhood. These houses were selling for under 300 a year ago, right? So if your budget was 300, now they're selling for 350, 375. I'm like, you're not even going to get in that neighborhood. Then you get the buyers who are like, well, I'm just going to wait for the market to cool off. I'm just going to tell you, so I always say, I don't have a real estate crystal ball. I can tell you from experience, if you know market our market's not going to nosedive to that now houses are selling for 350, 375, that you're going to get back in this neighborhood for 295.
Not realistic.
It's not realistic.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. And unfortunately, those buyers price themselves out of the market. My spiel lately has been, and I gave it to my sister who's buying a house in Newfoundland the other day. I gave it to clients in the last couple of days. I'm like, from a buyer's perspective, at the end of the day, it's not what a house is listed for, it's what it sells for. And you as the buyer have to determine if this house is the value that you see. So I'll go back to a young couple that I wrote an offer with. They went in at 350, like the house we looked at it at 350. They had 9 offers. We've been looking to stay in their budget or 450 mark. Like, is the value this house 400 for you? Right? So don't get fixated on the house that's listed for 349. I'm like, you still would have made me view this house if it was 399, right? And they're like, yeah, because I'm like, so I told them, I said, just gonna tell you, this house is gonna sell with a 4 in front of it. I'll put money on it. I don't have a real estate crystal ball, but I just know from going into it and out the great condition it was, and that we were competing with 8 other buyers.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, that house is gonna sell for 4 because it was move-in ready. So I always say to people, don't get fixated on it. Buyer has this amount of money. They want to see what that money gets them. And if any of you bought a house, you did the exact same thing. So on the sell side, I want to keep them educated. I do, haven't done them for a while, but I had to do before COVID, I would do market reports. So every 2 weeks I send a report. Now I'm communicating with them on their feedback and stuff, but market reports essentially say, this is what the market is saying. So let's take my neighborhood. I'm in West Bedford, right? So in my neighborhood, I'm like, we put a house on and I'm like, there's 5 other competitive listings. So I want them to know that. I want to tell them, so we've had 3 showings. But 2 in the neighborhood have sold. Here are the 2 that have sold. Here's a new one that has come on. I want to keep them educated. And that's one of my value propositions of how I sell myself on my listing appointment. My job is to keep you educated on the current market. As a buyer, you are going to look at all the inventory. As a seller, you're not. You just put your for sale sign and you get your house ready for show. You're not going to see all the other houses that are your competition. A buyer has the eyes to be able to see what else is out there, and they get an idea of value. So after looking, these guys we've only looked at 3 homes. because they want to stay at that 400 mark, which as you guys all know, that's hard to be in. They're getting an idea of what a value of 400 is really quick. Right? So as a seller, that's not always the case. I dig on that, on motivation. I'm asking questions on my consultation. I'm like, I want to know if they have an idea of what they want the house to sell for. Right?
Yeah.
And again, depending on personalities and depending on your relation, closed cards, right? They're like, well, not really sure. We were hoping you could tell us. Then, as I'm we're going through it, I'm like, are you on viewpoints? And they're like, yeah, I look at viewpoints and stuff. So and then there are people who say to me, no, what's a viewpoint? Right. So then I'm like, I know they use realtor.ca. If someone's using viewpoint, you have access to the sale information. So I know that they are watching market, right? They just want to see where the number is. Now, on objections, like Suzette, if I get pushback, oh, well, you said 550 to 560. We really think our house is 625. We had an agent that told us that we could list for that. I said, again, me deciding, as Travis said, whether I want to take that listing or not. I push back on that is, listen, I have a goal of not listing your house. My goal is to sell your house. I feel from what the market is telling us, unfortunately, that 625 is not likely where you're going to sell. So I would be doing you a disservice by taking your listing and setting up the expectations that you think you're going to get 620 to 625. And when we agree that you would be really disappointed with me, this house doesn't sell 3 months, I keep coming to you saying there's no viewings and we need to do a price reduction, would you be frustrated with me? They usually go, well, yeah, because we want to sell. So that's where we can agree to disagree, right? So how much money do I want to put into marketing? Like Travis said, do I want to list that house? Do I want to pay for a stager? Do I want to pay for a photographer? And do I want them to hate me at the end of the process? That is not my goal. I want my clients to love me and I tell them that. I said, my goal is to get you what you want. And I want it to be a positive and pleasant experience so that you tell your friends and family about me and that you use me again in the future. It's my goal.
Ideally, things, they won't necessarily go as expected, but they'll go in terms of, a framework of something you've already discussed with the clients.
Setting expectations. Nothing goes as expected. So always doing this is what happens next is really good for all clients. This is what happens next. This is what we're going to do next. So for instance, personal experience. Yesterday, two new listings came on the market for my very in need buyer. We sent showing requests. I got a request back from the agent that said, oh, sorry, like we're going to wait till tomorrow. He hadn't put showing instructions on it. He's like, we're not going to show the house till tomorrow. I have set the expectations with my seller when we list the house because they've had it staged. They've had it, photoed probably 2 days ago. I set the expectations like, listen, here's where I want you to know that within the first 24 hours, we're likely going to get short-term notices. We're going to get someone who wants to, like when I put this, when this goes live on the system, there's likely we're going to get a showing or two requests. Going forward, after about 48 hours, I would tell you that we usually get the day before notice. So that's when I'm talking about the kids having the house, the dogs, what they were going to do with the dogs when they have showings, all of that kind of stuff. I'm a big proponent of setting the expectations. So typically, if I'm going to put a listing on, my sellers that house is ready and good to go. If it isn't, then I'm going to put showing restrictions on it.
That makes sense. I didn't realize the trend when new listings go on to showings. So how will that regulate?
I would say when you talk about trends, it's where we're in a very ebbs and flow, right? So it all depends. So again, setting the expectation when I go to a listing, and I've looked at what has been going on in the last few months. Am I putting showing instructions on property? Do I think I'm gonna get multiple offers? So that has to be, showing instructions have to be in your, SCBA. That on. However, and I set the expectations when we have that conversation. Okay, here's the plan. We're gonna put it on today. It's Friday. And we're gonna show the house Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, and we're gonna ask for offers to come in on Tuesday. Tuesday comes around and we don't have offers, then we're gonna remove those showing instructions. And then I have a conversation about that, about how much notice they need. Do they have to get the dogs out? Are they working from home? Like all those things. And then they could say, oh, as long as we get day before notice, we'll make sure that the dog is at doggy daycare and, we're gone from the house from 9 to 5. So we'll make the beds and it'll be ready to go. Yeah. Oh, look, you guys get this in each of them. I love it. It's an affirmation. I am knowledgeable and caring and the best agent for these clients. They will appreciate my expertise and preparation and choose me to represent them as they sell their home. I mean, it's funny because I think about this stuff. I tell my kids this stuff. So if I'm telling my kids to do things, I'm like, why can't we do these things, right? So you kind of just got to put yourself in a positive mind frame. I try to look at rejection now as just a learning experience for me. If someone doesn't list with me, I'm like, why didn't they list with me? Do I ask all the time? Not all the time. If I have the opportunity, I will, just in the sense that it's saying, I appreciate, I do set that up too, especially if I don't know them. When I'm leaving, and then I give them the information. I say, listen, I understand that you're interviewing other people and I appreciate and value your time. Thank you for allowing me to interview for the position. I'm like, all I ask, if you decide to go with someone else, can you please just let me know? I'd be very grateful. That's what I ask for. Don't ask necessarily why. When the listing goes on and I see that it's VIX 25 and I told them 550 to 560 or whatever, I know why they didn't go with me. However, I'm a crazy person and I will haunt that house and watch it till it sells or doesn't sell to see if I'm wrong. And you know what? If I'm wrong, then that's the learning experience for me. They get 620 for the house. Didn't, by the way. I know they won't. However, if they do, then bonus is on me. I also, when we go back to all that list of your closes, when I get pushback a lot, so let's go with 550, 560, and a seller says to me, we really think like that our house is going to sell for 570. I'm like, I can appreciate that. And you are the driver and the decision maker in this process. So why don't we see price? So how about we list for that price and we will list it for 30 days at that price. So logistically, Suzette, I'm not saying do a CBA for that long. I'm just saying list at that price. I'm getting a buy-in from them that they tell me after 30 days, they're going to do a $10,000 price reduction. And I'm going to also preface to them, listen, and I talk about viewings and I always say, we can determine the market on viewings. We're either going to get lots of people through the door, which means there are lots of buyers. However, if we're not getting offers, those buyers are buying something else. So we're missing the mark on that, or we're not getting people through the door. We, again, determine based on our showing activity. If we're not getting them through the door, we are not priced where we should be. If I get buy-in from them that, okay, yeah, they know more, right? No, my house is, I've been a seller. I know how high maintenance sellers are. So I would say, yes, we'll list at that. And in 30 days, you agree that we're going to do a price reduction. And then I tell them, If you decide, because again, by the bi-weekly, like that's week 2, they're gonna get a report from me. If they say, oh my God, we've only had one showing, like we need more showing. Then they're gonna usually ask me, can we do that price reduction now? Love those. Opportunities, I've already pushed you on opportunities. I swear by it. It's so amazing. Do all of the things. Listing walkthrough. I do listing walkthroughs. I usually will, so I go in, thank them for like having me come to their home. I usually find the kitchen table or the dining room table where I put my stuff and then say, I'd love to have a quick look at your home. And I typically will get someone to go with. I can buzz through the house. Again, that's building rapport for me, letting them walk me through the house. I ask questions. Because I tell them, I said, because I'm going with my notepad. I'm like, tell me about your renovations. Tell me about what you've done since you bought the house. They're giving me a tour. We get down to the utility room. I ask them about the air exchanger. I'm like, when was the last time you cleaned the air exchanger? And I'll have a military engineer say to me, I do it every 6 months. Or I'll have someone say, the air exchanger? What? I don't know. I've never done that. And then that's when you typically open it up. There's a wasp nest in it and dust this thick. And I'm like, so I'm going to suggest that as part of your prepping to get ready for the market, that you clean this, and I tell them how to clean it, or have someone clean it. I showed a house last night that literally can see in the vents in the bathroom. It's like they're like I said to my client, I was like, going to tell you that the air exchanger is going to be pretty dirty. So just prep work with stuff like that as we walk through the house. If it's on well and septic, I'm asking them, and when we see the clean out and asking them where that is, was the last time they had their water tested. Because when we're down there, if they have a water softener or any equipment, I'll see it. Ask them when it's been serviced. It's essentially letting them tell you the story of the house, and then that helps me with giving suggestions and recommendations of what they need to do to get ready. This is genius. I love it, and I swear I wish I did it all the time, and I filter, but that's just a personal thing. What's wrong with handwritten note to say thank you? Thank you for allowing me to view your home. And I say, I'm going to teach myself that I'm going to do this more often. Listing agreement. I'm happy to answer any questions, even from a broker perspective on listing agreements. 99% of the time, I'm doing everything through DocuSign now. I like DocuSign. All the documents are clean. Nothing has to be done by hand and scanned, and then it looks wonky. That's my preference. Now, if I was listing my mother's house and she's 78 and refuses to use a computer, for sure, I'm going to do it by hand then. Uh-oh. Technical difficulties. That's it. That's why it won't change page. Why don't they have a thank you very much page? Anyone have questions about the listing agreement? No questions? Mark, what are you doing? Are you doing chest, biceps, legs today? Do you have any questions? Oh, he's in the car.
I'm driving. I'm driving
Done?
home now to. Yeah, I'm driving home to a house full of family, so about 20 family.
Oh, Jason
Can you-
jumped in here.
can you hear
We
me?
got Jason. Yeah, we got Jason now, and we lost Lee and Colton. Anyone? Oh, we got minutes, the amount of time to pick broker's brain on a listing agreement. Anyone? No? Here's what I'm going to tell you. If you've never had a listing or you've only had a couple, get a house and list it. Practice on that. I swear by this, like why we are practicing on actual clients. So I would tell you, give yourself homework. Do something this weekend, get a house in your neighborhood that's on the system, and go and do the listing paperwork yourself. I am a huge believer in that kwselect.ca. Some of you may not have even met Jessica yet. It's because on maternity leave. She created that as a resource page. I swear every answer that you need to know or tutorial is on that page. I am an avid learner. I feel like there's always something to learn in this business. I watch videos all the time, whether it's through KW Connect or it's through that website of trainings that Jessica does. This will be recorded and it'll be on there. So like, it's often we don't do things until we're actually in it. I'm like, why risk that? Like, this is, if you're going to do a $400,000 listing appointment, like kind of crazy to practice on. So I would say to you, do a listing, practice your listings. Just do the paperwork, practice it, and it'll get easier for you.
Hey, Susan, from a
Yes, Travis.
broker standpoint, question for you, more so of a
Yeah.
FIFO. Can you explain the new rules around coming soon?
Sure can, bud. It's pretty simple. You say pretty simple and then we get, so coming soon versus exclusive. So the way that I interpret coming soon was in the past was I'm putting a coming soon sign up, like saying, flashing lights on this house, like, look what I'm going to list, look what I'm going to list, but you don't have it listed. The rule is from the effective date, you fill out an SDBA and you have your effective date be today. You have 3 days to have it on MLS. 72 hours. It used to have exceptions for the weekends, but they don't anymore. It's 72 hours. It has to be on MLS. That is also the same for doing exclusive listing. You can list an exclusive. Let's say you need a seller, and we talked about this at the beginning, 14 days. So let's say they need 3 weeks to a month to get ready, but you want them in contract. You're going to sign an exclusive listing. You're going to get your stager in. They are getting a painter. They are rented a storage. They're doing their facility. So they are in contract with you. However, you are not marketing the property. They are getting the property ready. Once you tell the world you have a house for sale, you have 72 hours to make sure that it is on MLS. It is essentially the rule. So I can have this house that my client has lived in for 25 years and they're decluttering and getting painted. I can put on the Facebook page in our brokerage, hey, and FYI, I have a bungalow in Millwood coming up. 3 bedrooms, 2 bath, and it's going to be priced around the $600,000 price range. It should be on MLS in 2 weeks if you've got anyone. You can talk one-on-one to people. You can't tell the world. And the reason is, and this is a CREA rule, it's because essentially there were people, agents, sellers that were not marketing to the masses. So a listing agent would be like, oh, I'm going to exclusively list this and I'm going to get one of my buyers or someone in my brokerage to buy this. We're going to do it off market. And it wasn't fair to the public because they're like, hey, how, houses keep coming up in the south end and they don't even go to market. They sell beforehand. So that was the concept behind it. Plus, from a real estate perspective, when off-market sales are happening, it affects our data. Now, you can get, you can look it up what it sold, but it affects the data. So when you're doing a market report, if the last 5 sales in that neighborhood have sold privately, you don't even have stats on the house. Right? So that was the concept behind it. So essentially, Travis, the golden rule is when you start the megaphone telling the world, whether that's on Facebook or you're standing on a soapbox or you're putting a sign up, you get 72 hours for it to be on MLS.
And if we do that and we put a coming soon sign up and we blast social media and something changes and the seller says, hold on a minute, I want to paint the main floor now. We are to remove everything, correct? Like what happens there and what are, I guess, the potential repercussions of it? I don't know.
I would say to you, why were you advertising a place that you knew was coming to market? See, I don't do coming soons because I look at it as I say to my clients, you get the house ready and we want to be the exposure to be everyone. Well, again, there are exceptions. For instance, if Sidney Crosby called me up and he wanted me to list his house on Grand Lake and says, I do not want it on MLS. Don't want people looky loose, getting on realtor.ca and looking at my house. So there's a form that I'm going to have a seller sign, says, do not want to be on MLS. You are going to market my property exclusively. I cannot Facebook blast it. I can't take out we used to have ads on the ad channel on TV or the real estate channel. You can't do that stuff. Now, I can call up specific agents. I'm not going to use Jerry Murphy because he's in my brokerage. So I'm going to tell everyone in my brokerage. I could call up David Dunn, say, David, they've got this listing. It's 3 million. It's on Grand Lake. I can call up Sandra Bryant. I can tell her individually that agents that I think would have, buyers for that $3 million house lakefront. And so that's how the only way you can sell exclusive that way.
Listed but not on MLS.
It's not on MLS. It's an exclusive listing. So as far as tracking, guess we would have to, it's a matter of what our SDBA said. Is it exclusive or was it MLS? Then we're typically not allowed to switch from MLS. I would probably in that scenario, what I would do is I would withdraw my listing. That means so if you had the house on the market for 2 weeks and the feedback kept being like that colors on the main level. So you're going to withdraw it from the system. Draw means they are still in contract with you, but it's off of MLS. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So I had a client last year, that was going down, or not last year, this year, going down south. So they had showings and they were just nervous about their house being shown while they were away. So we withdrew the listing. However, I had an agent reach out to me and say, hey, I've got an out of town buyer and I really think this one checks all the boxes. So I reached out to my seller and he was like, okay, I can set the alarm remotely. I'm going to get my neighbor to check on the house. So I actually put the listing back on, even though I had an amendment of when it was supposed to be. I redid an amendment that said goes back on. Agent went to view it, wrote an offer, and then we were able to put back the sale on realtor.ca MLS. Because if you look at the MLS rules, the MLS rules state that you have to have a house that's willing to show to go on MLS. So if my listing was today, I was gonna do the 72 hours, so I'm gonna have it go, even though it's effective today, it's gonna go active on a MLS on Monday, so my 72 hours. I showed it to a couple people on the weekend, and then we got an offer. That technically isn't supposed to be an MLS listing because it didn't go out to the masses. It didn't go out to the public. That could be a violation in MLS. Anyone else got listing agreement questions?
I have a question about something I heard a couple weeks ago, and I've just been wondering about it related to if someone is promoting their listings on Facebook or social media of some sort. Is there a rule that says that you can't forward that or share it, you know, as part of the advertising chain if you're not part of the team or inside the team? Like, is there a,
Yeah.
what, can you speak
So-
to that a little bit more?
Yeah, so a listing belongs to, for us, it's designated agency. Yes. So as a brokerage, Keller Williams owns the listing because it's listed with Keller Williams, but I'm the designated agent to be listing agent. However, so that you want to advertise my property, so I need to get permission from the seller that you are good to share or promote that listing. It's how it's supposed to work. You're supposed to have permission from the seller.
And so that applies if I'm like forwarding it to, say I see Travis's listing and I forward it to a girlfriend and say, hey, check this out. I just saw this on Facebook. Does that
No.
follow the same lines?
Then you're giving that information to a potential client, like to your buyer.
But if I forward it or repost something that he's posted on his Facebook to my Facebook, I shouldn't do that unless I'm part of the contract?
Oh, you just have to have permission.
Permission, okay.
I feel like this is a gray area too, because when the contract is signed, the seller is agreeing to IDX as well. So IDX allows my personal page used to have to be only like Keller Williams listings, right? But if you go on my page, it has a search engine that shows you all of the listings. The same thing with when you print cut sheets or give cut sheets to potential buyers, at the bottom, it has to say who the listing brokerage is, and it has your information. That's why in a write-up, it's not allowed to say, call Susan today to view. Because you, as the buyer's agent, are giving my listing. So when you print your client view of the sheet, it's going to have that it was listed with Keller Williams. It's going to have your information on the bottom of it.
So how would you, like, if I wanted to support, some of my colleagues, how would I structure that when I'm getting the listing so that Travis wouldn't need to get my permission to share my listing post? Like, is there a way that I could kind of say, like, how would you get consent to, say,
So-
if any of my colleagues decide that they want to share your post just to get it better coverage through
Yeah.
their, personal Facebook, like, how would I create a clause or create a statement to get that permission so that
Yeah.
it doesn't have to happen, on
Well,
Sunday
yeah.
for Travis and on Tuesday for June?
The other thing, so I would recommend, there is an advertising course on the NSAR Hub. I think it was like our 2017 mandatory course. It's on there. I've watched it a couple times. I would have taken that course, but Chris Peters teaches it. I would recommend everybody watch that. It also gives a resource for social media and sharing information. you really aren't supposed to be, if you read the MLS rules, you're not supposed to, you can't advertise a property after it's closed, even if you're the listing agent. So you have permission in your contract to advertise while it's for sale. But after it closes, it's no longer that seller's house, right? So that we could have a long discussion of what the rules are, what you're supposed to do, and what people actually do. I just often say is, the rule is not to speed. People speed, you're breaking the law. Or to be more drastic, I'm like, you're not supposed to steal. Happens all the time. I don't steal. I don't break in. I don't steal things. So but there are people who do that. If we get into policing, all I can say is I believe is come from a place of learning the rules, knowing what you are supposed to do. Can't tell you how many times I can say, so and so, or over at this XYZ brokerage is doing this, is doing that. It has a lot to do with people not knowing the rules. So I would say, because again, the MLS rules, are there to make us follow guidelines. You be fined for breaking an MLS rule? Absolutely. When you put in a listing and Alicia sends you a note saying, I need this, or please call a broker, it's because doing something outside of the rules. And her, as our buffer, like, make sure that we're following the rules so that we don't get fined. So let me find it. So my long version of that is you're even supposed to have, people do it all the time. They're like, oh, look at, like, standing in front of the house. My client bought 123 Main Street. Unless you have the seller's permission, you're not actually supposed to advertise that. So I'm going to find out an answer for you on the best way as far as if we can come up with a clause or a sheet and for sharing, and I will get back to you on that.
Okay, thank you. No, I want to do it the right way, but I
Totally.
want to kind of grow that team support and getting listings out there, especially if there's people in other areas that may have interest.
With you on that. Anyone else have anything else? Me finishing at 4:11. Alicia told me it was 9 to 12. I'm like, I'll be done by 11. Can give you some time back. Have lots to go and either practice a listing or go search for a new client now.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Have a great day.
Thanks. Have
Happy
a good day.
Friday, everyone.